ready to start looking at some artwork about the Crusades. I hope you are. Um, so I realized after our discussion that I had not made this little fact sheet available, and I think I sent it out to you then, but so I wanted to use some of these facts for the slideshow. So, because the Crusades is pretty spread out, it's pretty complicated. There were so many of them. That's why they're plural. But it all started in the 11th century when the Pope Urban II, gave this rallying speech to get people up in arms to go on crusades, and this was all for the point of um, liberating the Holy Land, especially the city of Jerusalem, from the hands of these infidels, these non believers, Muslim people. Um, and so a great movement started. And the Pope also promised forgiveness of sins, indulgence, which I said here is forgiveness of sins and or reduction of time in purgatory. So Peter the Hermit organized the People's Crusade in 1096, and that was the one that massacred many Jews. And you read a first-hand account of that in a city in Germany. It massacred many Jews on their way across Europe. So you can see by this time in history that this just noticing that people are different or being aware of their difference has taken a deadly turn, and that many people are being killed. So the first crusade, in response to Urban's speech, mustered 100,000 soldiers and took Jerusalem and much of the Holy Land in 1099. Western Europeans managed to maintain control for most of the 12th century. Rather than give the taken land to the Byzantines, they kept it and established Crusader kingdoms, also known as the Outremer kingdoms, by 1135. By the mid-12th century, Muslims had retaken Edessa and Aleppo. And then I found some interesting websites, and one is the Outremer Map Project, which is really interesting. I think you might enjoy this. It's a really short little video. And then the other was Super Nerdy Board Game Geeks, that had the Outremer map, and you sort of like move your way around the Mediterranean as a board game, and the plague strikes, I don't know, stuff like that. So on the road to Jerusalem, I found a selection of pictures, and my first thought was to try to organize these chronologically to show you the various crusades, but then that just got crazy. So I thought it'd be better to organize them in themes. So it really doesn't matter whether it was the first or second crusade, to your viewing pleasure. So you can just see these in this organization. So I started with On the Road to Jerusalem, and I found this nice map of Crusader kingdoms over on the right. Um, and the sites are all located on there, so I'm going to be showing you with red arrows where the picture is supposed to be. And some of the artwork I found was not specific. So here, for example, is a wedding on one side, and then on the right is a ship full of crusaders ready to go across the sea. Of course, they didn't sail like that, but oh well. And this is the Crusaders taking Damascus. So here's Damascus in modern day Syria up here. And as always, when we look at these pictures, I mean, they're dwelling on the good guys. So many of them are showing the heroic actions of the European knights in their armor and their weapons and their coats of arms, etc. But the whole point of this class is to see how they are depicting the other. So they not all the pictures do, and sometimes I'm just going to show you pictures of sites in the Crusades that don't necessarily show the other. So this is very general, I think. So anyway, here's our Crusader army, and here's the city of Damascus, and they're coming up there, and I don't see any others illustrated here. Everybody here looks like good guys to me. I don't know. And here's the landing at Damietta. So apparently Louis the Ninth, who was the king of France, who also later became St. Louis. A city was named for him. But he was very devout, and the king, actually went on crusades. This was the seventh crusade. I think he went on the sixth and the seventh crusade. Um, and he landed at Damietta. So this shows Damietta here. I'm not saying this was supposed to be his crusade, but it was some illustrations of people landing at Damietta. And you can kind of read the name there. So I'm not seeing any, well, there's others up here defending the castle, of course. But I didn't see a lot of difference in their depictions. Like this one guy in the back looks rather dark, but so do these guys. So I don't know. And here's the big fortress, the Crusader fortress of Acre. And it's right on the coast, and you can see it there. So Acre survives today. And here's a map. I think this is from Matthew Paris's journal that shows Acre. You can read it right there. La Ville d'Acre. And that is his illustration of Acre. Of course, Matthew Paris never went to Acre, so, it's all, you have to take everything with a grain of salt. But Acre survives to this day, so there's a picture on the left, and apparently they're really counting on a lot of tourist trade to come in there and bring money into Acre. So personally, if I went to Israel, I would like to visit Acre just to see this. So here's some of the passageways and the spaces within the fort, and you can see some Gothic rib vaulting there on the arches. There were lots and lots of pictures. I just found a really good website of the fortress at Acre. But like I said, it wasn't serving our purpose to see the others, so there wasn't much point in showing you more of that. But here's a couple of pictures from manuscripts now showing the siege of Acre. So that'll help you a little bit. Now, at this point, in my understanding, Acre is held by the Crusaders. So they are the good guys in the fortress, and the people attacking from the outside are the bad guys, because, it's a black and white world. So I wish I could read that. But I was looking at this, and everybody here looks pretty much the same. They all look kind of Asian to me. They're all wearing really similar armor and helmets. And then the other picture, I just saw one guy. Well, these two guys on this tower both are wearing what looks to me like a red Phrygian cap, which is sort of our indication of some other. Ooh, and you know what I just noticed in this first glance? We have a crescent moon on the flag up there. So, okay, that shows that this must be the siege where the good guys are taking Acre. I was under the impression that Acre had been built by the Crusaders, but what do I know? I don't really study warfare that much. So, okay, bad guys in fort, two bad guys with Phrygian caps, good guys coming here to take it for God. Anyway, Siege of Acre and the real Acre. So, Crusader Fortress at Croc. I'm just assuming it's a Crusader Fortress. And here's the illustration of Croc, and there's various spellings. You should know that spelling is not uniform for a really long time. But there's an illustration of Croc. There's the real castle of Croc, what's left of it. And Croc over here on the eastern side of the Dead Sea in Israel. Okay. Then this one, I don't know where it was supposed to be, but it was just so graphic and so full of details. I had to show you. A ship of well-armed noble crusaders had just landed and started killing the evil Muslims. So it looks like they just walked off the ship. Here's the water, the ship, and they're all armed and ready to go and just start hacking away at these poor guys. So here it shows some others. Dead others spewing blood just as red as the Europeans' blood. This guy in a turban. Other than the clothing, I don't see any distinguishing characteristics, and their little houses in the background aflame. So interesting. And I just found these two pictures of people fighting, so non identified, non specific sites, um, although they may have been in their original context. These are obviously the bad guys because they have a crescent moon on their shield, and these guys on the left are the good guys, and they've got crosses on their shield. I was kind of curious to notice the difference in size, and wondered if the bad guys were made smaller just simply to fit inside of that arch of whatever castle it's supposed to be. I have no idea. And then on the right, oh, this one is really good because you can see the Crusaders on the left and this horse in full regalia there. Even the king, this could be Louis, because he's obviously a king, coming to siege this castle. Now look at the people defending the castle from up on top of the tower. And you can see these are real despicable, real evil people. You can tell because his face is covered. He's got a big nose. This guy has a big nose and dark skin. Oh yeah, these are the enemy for sure. Unlike our handsome and noble knights over there. Okay, now look at this one. This one looks considerably later to me just by the style of the painting, and I'm sorry I don't have a caption on this. So many of these things are just thrown up on other people's websites. You know, who knows what you're getting. I would guess this is 14th or 15th century. Um, and the good guys, the Crusaders, are all have their heads covered with helmets, and the bad guys are wearing turbans, and their skin is considerably darker. You can see they have curved swords, a crescent moon over on this flag, a Star of David here, three balls here. I just could not tear my eyes away from these horses, which look like they're wearing eyeshadow, and they might even be establishing some sort of a relationship. Though anyway, the horses were just a hoot. So there you go, Crusaders again showing good guys versus bad guys. So the goal, the main prize in this whole endeavor, of course, was the city of Jerusalem. And so I found several illustrations of that. This is from a slightly later French history painter who did this in a manuscript. And I just found this so strange that I'm assuming this is intended to be the Temple of Solomon, the Jewish temple, even though it doesn't exist. Maybe they didn't know that. But this is the temple that looks every bit like a Gothic cathedral, a Gothic church, except we don't see the top of it. We don't see any crosses or spires or anything. And it's got a walled enclosure. So this is, and I'm assuming all these dark figures here are the orcs. Oh, I'm sorry. I mean the bad guys who are defending Solomon's temple while the Crusaders are nobly trying to gain access and reclaim this temple for God. It's great, isn't it? This I found in my research. This is the Dome of the Rock, as most of you know if you've taken an art history class or LBST 1105, the Dome of the Rock, which is in Jerusalem. It was built in the 7th century by Muslims to commemorate a holy site in Islam. So it has absolutely nothing to do with Judaism, but nevertheless, it was a beautiful monument that when the Crusaders saw it, they assumed it must be Solomon's temple. And well, it looks a lot different than a Gothic cathedral, but it's still not what they thought it was. It's gorgeous. So there you go. And then this was the prize, according to what my research found. This is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, Jerusalem. This was the main monument the Crusaders were concerned about getting back into Christian hands. It was originally built during Constantine's reign in the 4th century, but it's been altered many times since. It marked the place where early Christians believed Jesus' body had rested prior to the resurrection. So, this is a nice old photograph showing the historical place with this rounded apse and this dome up here. And this is a more contemporary photograph, but you can also see the same things are there. Like I was comparing this little doorway right here is the same as this one here. And you can look at these windows, all the fenestration is the same. And obviously that wall is the same. So I like seeing things like that, seeing things that don't really change much over many years. So this is the entrance to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and it was likely the door that the Crusaders went through once Jerusalem had been taken. And it's where pilgrims to this day still enter the church. Inside the church is this tomb within the church. Now, its historicity is up for debate, and that's not the point. In the Middle Ages, the Crusaders believed this was the site, that this was the tomb where Jesus' body had laid for 3 days, 2 days, however you want to count your days, and from which he emerged on Easter morning. So that is the tomb inside the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. So you see, this is a very special site. This is why the Crusaders would not want to have any non-believers having control over this site. We'll put it that way. Now, I told you King Louis IX of France went on crusade, and this is an illustration that actually identified him on crusade. Ships out in the water. I have no idea what's going on, who's who, if this is before he's leaving France or if this is supposed to represent the Holy Land. You can see there's been some bloodshed over here, and the king is down here on his knees. It's probably in the Holy Land somewhere. It could even be meant to be Acre. I have no idea. And then I found this tapestry, which was just so strange. I could not help. I hope it's got the correct identification, but it was called The Siege of Jerusalem. And I looked at it and I thought, what the heck? I mean, look at the soldier back on horseback there. It looks like he's dressed like a Roman soldier. And I noticed that these guys are carrying Roman, what do you call it, standards, Roman battle standards. I'm thinking that this may be intended to be Constantine and the taking of Jerusalem when, I don't even know that he went there. But his mother did, so I don't know. Anyway, interesting. So this is one of the Crusaders in the First Crusade, Godfrey of Bouillon. He was a French knight, and so he has a legend of his own. He becomes the first ruler of the Kingdom of Jerusalem. So the Crusaders, when they set up their Crusader kingdoms, Jerusalem was sort of like the capital, and he was the first leader, but he didn't want to be called king. He was called something like Duke of Jerusalem. I don't know, something like that. But he's very famous in his own right. So here's a representation of Godfrey and another one over here where he actually has I don't know what he's doing there, but it could have something to do with fixing supper. And the Emperor Crusaders. So many Crusaders died on crusade, of course, and many came back to Europe. And if they came back and they were buried in their local church, there would be indications on their tombs, if they could afford it, that they had actually gone on crusade. So that's the end of your Crusader art.